With the spread of Covid-19 throughout the globe, the world as we know it has changed before our eyes. Jobs have been lost, students are being asked to leave their universities, and events are being canceled. Some of these events have been sporting events that we look forward to every year this time. The Masters has been moved to the fall, and both men's and women's March Madness tournaments have been canceled. The NCAA has also suspended all other sporting activities for the time. To go along with this, the NBA season has been suspended indefinitely, and nobody knows whether or not the 2019-2020 season will ever be able to be resumed. Major League Baseball had to stop all baseball activities while in the midst of spring training and weeks away from opening day. Even with all this already, examples of sports being stopped due to the outbreak continue to pile up. Now let's look at how some of these leagues are handling these difficult times. Major League Baseball stopped their spring training weeks before the first pitch of the regular season was set to take place. By doing this, baseball hoped to stop the spread by keeping players separated from their peers and fans. By doing this, though, thousands of people working in these organizations were put out of jobs. While this may not seem like a big deal since many of the players within these teams are on multi-million-dollar contracts, those working in the stadium, front office, and minor league affiliates were not as lucky. To help those affected, each Major League team has donated $1 million to help their employees affected by this pandemic. The Atlanta Braves brought this a step further by guaranteeing their employees will receive full pay through at least the very end of May. To go along with this, all teams are guaranteeing their minor league players will also receive pay. Each player shall receive $400 a week, which in some cases is more than what some of the players were making before the outbreak occurred. Major League Baseball is also looking at getting their season started as soon as they can, with an early May start potentially looming. With this, though, there would be many rules put in place to help manage the risk of spreading the virus. All games would be played in the Arizona area without fans in attendance. Players, coaches, and staff would all live in hotels during this time, going only from hotel to the field their game was located at. The on-field action would look a little different too. The games would not allow mound visits. There would be a virtual strike zone, and players would not send the dugout with their team. Instead, they would sit in empty bleachers 6 feet apart from one another. Even with all this, though, this May start seems a bit early for baseball. The college football season could potentially be canceled or moved due to the COVID-19 outbreak. With the NCAA canceling March Madness and the rest of its sports seasons that were supposed to be occurring right now, many have begun to turn their attention to whether or not the college football season will occur for 2020. Currently, student athletes and coaches are not supposed to be holding any team workouts or team get-togethers. Coaches have been forced to go on with recruiting through online calls to try and convince the nation's top talent to come play at their schools. And it has been brought up by ADs across the country that in order to get a full season in with correct start time, teams may have to play each other in empty stadiums, which really wouldn't be any difference for teams like Georgia Tech. However, others are not in full support of this, saying that the president of the universities will not be on board with this action. There have been talks of scheduling changes and moving the season back later in the year. The one thing for college football is that they do have time to see how much worse this pandemic gets before they are forced to make a decision. The NFL is another league being affected by the current pandemic the world is experiencing. The one thing they have going for them, though, is that they aren't currently in or about to start their season. That being said, however, that doesn't mean the NFL has escaped any sort of repercussions from dealing with the virus. In order to keep players, coaches, and staff safe, teams have completely closed down their facilities. This means players currently signed to the team can't use team facilities, and free agents aren't able to tour these facilities to see if a certain team has what they want in an organization. Organized team activities have been canceled for the time being, and so is the annual league meeting. The draft, which was supposed to be occurring in mid-April, has been moved to a virtual format. While some have expressed confidence that the NFL should be able to start their season on time, others worry that players are more likely to be injured if they are not able to properly condition their bodies during the off-season. The NBA was one of the first to suspend their season after player Rudy Gobert tested positive for COVID-19. Since the league has stopped play, almost a month has passed. Playoffs were supposed to have started by now, and many are wondering when and if they will at all for this season. Commissioner Adam Silver has stated there has been nothing determined about whether the season will resume at all, and there will not be a decision made on this until May the very earliest. With players not able to participate in any sort of team events, it may be hard to resume the season if players feel that they are not in basketball shape they want to be in. There have been discussions between trainers and owners, however, about a 25-day plan to finish the season. It would start off with individual training for 11 days, and if everything goes good for all the players, teams would have a mini training camp for 14 days to get back into things. Even with this, though, on the current timeline the NBA is on, they wouldn't start play back up until July.
While most sports organizations were trying to cancel all their events, the UFC tried to move on forward with all their fights. The last UFC fights that were held without any complications were on March 14th in Brasilia, Brazil. Here was the last time that there was no travel bans, so President of UFC, Dana White, was able to get all their fighters into the location. Following the UFC Brasilia event, it was UFC London, which ultimately had to be canceled due to not being able to get the fighters to this country and the venue not allowing them to have the event in general. So Dana White decided to cancel that event and all the events leading up to the April 18th event. The fight fans wanted this April 18th event card to happen really bad, so Dana White tried his hardest to pull it off. His main event fighter flew back to Russia, so the travel ban had stopped him from coming back. So Dana White had to basically find a replacement or cancel it altogether. He successfully found a replacement, but didn't have a venue. So there was a week before the fights, and a venue got announced, which the governor of California was not happy about. So the governor of California called up ESPN, which is what UFC is broadcasted off of, and told them not to air the event. So after all the hard work, the UFC event had to be canceled. When asked what Dana White would do with all the fighters' purses, he told them that they would be fully paid because of all their hard work they put into training, and every single one of the UFC faculty would be paid all their salary. Moving forward, he was also asked if anything would happen. To this, he responded that yes, he had an idea called Fight Island. He was going to rent a private island and build a UFC facility there in which the UFC fighters were able to fight. He was able to do events, and UFC fighters were able to train there. This time of not having any events is very crucial because it minimizes the risk of having large gatherings of people, so they won't contract corona. Also, even if events were held, they were taking every safety precaution measurable. They followed all the guidelines. 10 people in the room. It was only fighters, their coaches, and some production crew and the commentators, which was around 10 people. As of now, the UFC is looking to go back to normal starting May 9th. They will start to hold these fights in Fight Island, and President Trump has even backed up both Dana White and Vince McMahon, who is the CEO of the WWE. The WWE has even just recently posted a new episode of their television show Raw, which is filmed in an empty stadium in their WWE faculty. President Trump has even said that both Dana White and Vince McMahon are the new economic task force trying to hold these events. When asked about safety and coronavirus, Dana White says, "Health and safety is something we worry about all the time, not just during the coronavirus. Obviously, this has made our jobs a little tougher, but we're going to do everything above and beyond to make everybody safe, like we always do. A lot of things will be different, though." To conclude about the UFC, there isn't much risk going on because they are following the guidelines, they are testing their fighters, they are testing their faculty, there's no people in these events over 10, so they can't really spread the disease. Sure, it might seem a little crazy to try to push for events during these times, but also a little normalcy wouldn't do nobody any harm as long as there's a lot of safety and precaution to be held. To conclude our presentation, most sporting organizations are canceling with some exceptions. They're hoping to get back to it as soon as possible, some faster than others, like the UFC. This is all crazy what is happening right now, and nobody in the world was ready for this outcome, leaving every business and person in chaos. Here's hoping that everything will go fine and everything will return back to normal in the next couple of months.